Today's video is sponsored by LG. Let's talk about some more Switch accessories. I recently did a video highlighting some of my favorite accessories for the OLED, and I've got more stuff that I want to talk about. This one's a little more broad. There's a couple things we're going to talk about that also work for the Switch Lite and regular Switch, but basically everything we talk about is going to also work for the Switch OLED, or will in the near future. And on that note, let's just go ahead and talk right away about one of the products that is getting an OLED update in the future, the Fixture S1. This is a Switch accessory that I took a look at earlier this year that acts as an alternative option to one of the better ways to play the Switch on the go. A very popular option that we've covered in the past are things like larger Joy-Cons, such as the Split Pad Pro, grips that just add a grip design to your Switch, but the Fixture takes this in a different direction by instead giving you the most comfortable way of using a Pro Controller with your Switch in handheld mode. This is a clip attachment that goes around the body of your Switch Pro Controller. You slide the Switch into the main handle and you can pivot it in a way that instead of being like a phone grip where the tablet is resting above and makes it very awkward where you feel the gravity and weight of the Switch tablet pulling you down, you can place it above the controller, making it much more evenly distributed. Now, of course, one of the big changes with the Switch OLED is that the tablet on it is ever so slightly wider than the regular Switch tablet. So the current model of the Fixture S1 does not work with the OLED just yet. It is just way too tight of a fit, but they have already announced that they have a version on the way. So if you're looking for a new way to play your Switch in handheld mode, this is an awesome pickup. If you grabbed a Switch OLED, gonna have to wait just a little bit, but keep those eyes open. One thing I will warn about is that compared to some of the other options out there, there is a light risk of causing some slight marking on either your Pro Controller or your Switch tablet, especially if you're not very careful with it. The Switch tablet, the worst you get is just these little tiny little marks that come from the rubber on the back rubbing against it. The Pro Controller, on the other hand, if you're not careful with how you slide it on, you can actually scratch the controller. So if you're using a limited edition Pro Controller, or you just really care about keeping your stuff in the most pristine state possible, you might want to look at other options. With that in mind, this has become one of the most comfortable ways for me to play my Switch on the go. I'm not using it right now because I've moved over to my OLED, but I'm very excited for an OLED option to come along for me to try out and see how that compares to some of the newer grip options that are also being released. Next up, let's talk about controllers. Now, in my last Switch OLED video, I talked about some of my favorite options that are very good one-size-fits-all approaches. Of course, there is the 8BitDo Pro 2, the official Nintendo Switch Pro Controller. One thing I didn't talk about, though, that I do also really like for the Switch is a Gamecube Controller option. This is especially useful for Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, but there are a number of games where, honestly, the Gamecube Controller does feel a little more at home. I am still holding out the hope that at some point we'll get some kind of Metroid Prime trilogy where I would love to use a Gamecube Controller with that as well. And there are a couple different options for this that I really enjoy. The best choice, honestly, is if you can get your hands on an official Nintendo Switch Gamecube controller. There are older ones you can get that can still be in good condition, and there are later ones they reprinted for the Switch that are actually still available at a pretty decent price if you get the import version. The only other thing is you need to have an adapter to hook this version up to your Switch, and that's where things get a little pricier. The official option for the adapter is just not cheap anymore. It's all resellers that are going to have it at a very high price, but there are a lot of copy options you can get that get the job done, but might run into some occasional little issues here and there. One option I've used personally that I do like is the 8BitDo adapter. The downside to this one is it only works for one controller at a time, not for a full set of 4. If you're looking for the full set of 4, you either need to pay extra for that official one, or just take your chances with one of the off-brand options made available. If you'd rather not deal with that and instead have a controller that connects directly to your Switch and acts as a regular Switch controller, a lot of the major third-party brands have made their own version of a GameCube controller, especially when Smash Bros. Was coming out. And of those, personally, I really like the one from PowerA. In terms of shape and design, it just feels the closest to the original GameCube controller to me. It's not a perfect fit, but as far as something that is designed for the Switch in mind, it comes very close. The D-pad is a little larger on it. It has added an additional Z button on the right side, so it can actually act as a regular Switch Pro controller as well, so it's not limited just to games that use GameCube-style inputs. And depending on your price range, you can grab this in a wired model that is much more affordable, or you can spend extra to get a wireless one that runs off of batteries. Now, as for something that isn't actually designed for the Switch outright, but I think is a really cool solution to one of the Switch's needs, let's take a look at some earbuds from today's sponsor, LG. One of the big feature updates to the Switch earlier this year is they finally added Bluetooth support, so you can use your favorite pair of Bluetooth earbuds with the system. But to be honest, Bluetooth isn't always the best way to handle wireless audio. A dedicated wireless connection can give you a better sound experience with more clarity. but Bluetooth is really convenient. And something that is a really interesting midpoint that can handle both of these are the LG TONE Free earbuds. They have the ability to act as just a regular set of Bluetooth earbuds, but you can also connect the charging case it comes with, which has another special feature we'll talk about in a second. You can connect this to your Switch dock or the Switch itself and have that act as a dedicated receiver so you get that higher quality audio. These give you both the convenience of a Bluetooth connection when you're playing on the go, or a higher quality connection with a dedicated receiver when you're playing at home using your Switch dock. These tone-free earbuds are also made in collaboration with Meridian, so they have awesome clarity of tone coming through the earbuds themselves. And the case actually also operates as a UV light that helps kill off bacteria on the headphones. If you wear your headphones a long time while playing games, which I know I'm absolutely guilty of, there's gonna be a little bacteria buildup over time. So the case is a great way to help fight back against that. Doesn't mean you shouldn't clean them every now and then, but it's gonna help to keep them nice and sanitized. Also, using the Tone app, you can customize different profiles, including a gamer mode that makes sure that when you are using Bluetooth, you're going to get the lowest latency possible in that profile. If you want to learn more about these earbuds, check out the link down below in the description. Going back to controllers, one thing that I haven't talked about in a little while that is a very useful option that a lot of people enjoy is a wireless adapter for your Switch. There are lots of options for the Switch when it comes to controllers, but at the end of the day, there might be something you find yourself to be very used to that you would prefer to use that isn't necessarily designed for the Switch. For instance, maybe you have a PS4 or PS5 and you really like using the DualShock 4 or DualSense. Well, there is a way to actually use these with the Switch thanks to Bluetooth connectivity, and there are a number of adapters on the market that will allow you to do this. In particular, one that I have used and enjoyed is the 8-bit DOE wireless adapter. This is a very simple adapter. It comes in two colors. There was an original model that looks like the Mario bricks, and then another one they released specifically for the PlayStation Classic, but it effectively is the exact same thing that's made available in gray. You plug this into one of the USB slots of your Switch, and it acts as a wireless receiver that you can connect a Bluetooth controller to. One of the really handy things about this, aside from the fact that you can again use another controller type that you like that doesn't normally work with the Switch, is that it does open up some additional options, for instance, being able to use remapping with the receiver. So for instance, maybe there are certain button mappings that you like to have for specific games, or maybe there are some games that just really need button mapping, like the N64 games that just got added in the expansion pack. Well, you can do that with the receiver so that when you're using that controller, it uses these remapped settings. The Switch does offer its own system level remapping, but it only works with their own official controller, so when you want to use one of these alternate designs, this is a really cool option that lets you still do that. If you're planning to grab a Switch, or already have one but you haven't bought a Pro controller yet, but you also already have a controller for your PlayStation, this is a really great way to just get multiple uses using just one controller you already own, rather than having to invest in whole other Pro controller options. Just don't get too confused when the ABXY buttons don't exactly line up. Something else that has been a very popular question for me as far as accessories go right now is carrying cases. Like I mentioned in my last video, when it comes to the kind of standard carrying cases, most things that work with the regular Switch will work with the Switch OLED, because while it is a little bit bigger, most carrying cases have a little bit of give and space. But when I talked in that video, I was mostly focusing on traditional case designs. There are a lot of other options out there you can grab that are really useful for the Switch OLED, in particular, if you're interested in carrying more than just the Switch itself around. There are carrying cases designed to carry all of the additional cabling that you need for your Switch along with the dock, so if you need a full portable setup to set up elsewhere, that is a really useful thing to hand. One slightly different option that I really enjoy and has been one of my favorite accessories since the launch of the Switch is PDP's backpack. This is a full-size backpack that you can use for not just the Nintendo Switch, but it has dedicated pockets that fit the Switch itself, the dock, cables, Pro controllers, Joy-Cons. It just gives you a nice organized place to put all these things away. One thing that I have seen a few people bring up before is that it's not necessarily always a great idea to be carrying around a bag that advertises the kind of specific equipment you're carrying in it, which I do actually agree with. So in general, while this is a great looking backpack, I think it's better to use for dedicated transport or make sure you're always wearing it. You don't want to necessarily leave this one sitting around somewhere unaccounted for. While we're on the subject of carrying cases, one thing I would love to shout out to is that if you're using a Switch Lite or you've picked up a Switch Lite this holiday season because it is the most affordable way to get into the Switch, one of the really big benefits of that console that I really enjoy is how much more portable it is than the other options out there. And something that can really help with that is the number of clamshell design cases that have been released for the system. Now there's an official one from Nintendo that I really like that uses a magnetic seal, but to be honest, it's not really the most price efficient option. It's something where I really like using the product itself, but when I look at how much I paid for it, it feels a little uneven. There are a number of other options you can find online, however, that fulfill basically the same design and still do just as good of a job. In fact, I picked one up for this video for my Switch Lite that is half the the price of the official Nintendo one that comes in a color that matches my preferred Switch Lite, which is the turquoise, and is designed in such a way that not only is it a clamshell design that you can just throw in a bag and keep the Switch Lite protected, but also just stays as a protective case that you can use while playing the system, so it has that little extra protection in case you say drop it. This is an excellent choice if you've got a Switch Lite for a kid and you want to make sure that that system stays protected. So there are a number of my other favorite accessories you can use with the Switch OLED, the regular Switch, or even the Switch Lite. Everything I talked about in today's video is linked down below in the description. I want to thank LG again for sponsoring today's video. If you guys enjoyed it, as always, make sure to like it, subscribe if you haven't yet, and I will see you guys later.